Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022, and in today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the state of North Carolina, where the Supreme Court in this state has released brand new congressional maps for the 2022 midterm elections. Now, since this map was passed by the courts, they drew their very own map. This actually will be in place until the next redistricting cycle for the state of North Carolina. So, based off of what I've gathered from the information, which is very scarce across numerous media sources, it looks like this map actually might only be in place for 2 years, and then it will be redistricted again based off of the state legislature. They will be able to try again, and then of course the Supreme Court can choose to uphold it or shoot it down. Now, the interesting thing right now is that North Carolina has some Supreme Court elections up in 2022, and the GOP is going to be heavily fighting for them. Luckily for Democrats, they have sufficed there better than they have on the presidential level, but it is by no means a solid ground for the Democratic Party, and if anything, they probably will soon end up being in the minority when it comes down to the state Supreme Court. But looking at the map, at least this is a momentary victory for the Democratic Party and could provide them some type of advantage in the state legislature following the 2022 midterm elections. Taking a look at the state of North Carolina, this is the map that is just passed and approved and now is fully in place. It joins many other states, nearly 40 states, in fact more than 40 states across the nation have finalized their brand new congressional maps, with now North Carolina being included. Now, this is super exciting, seeing the state itself sort of solidify where its new districts are, and it also is good news, I would say, for both parties that the map is now fairer than it was before. Looking at the old map, and this is an old map that was actually forcibly redrawn by, guess what, the state Supreme Court. In 2018, they ordered that the former North Carolina map, the one that was used for a substantial period of time, was gerrymandering the state and was completely unfair. So they decided that a new map had to be drawn in time for 2020, right before the census here, and a new map ended up with 5 Democrats in Congress from North Carolina and 8 Republicans. Now, previously speaking, it was 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats, but then it ended up with Democrats gaining 2 in the state of North Carolina. So, in a pushback on that, the state of North Carolina State Assembly, the Republican-controlled one that has a pretty substantial majority here, 28 to 22 in the state Senate and 69 to 51 in the House of Representatives, what they did was draw an egregious gerrymander. Not only was this worse than the previous map from the 2018 type debacle, this map ruined the Democratic Party's chances at winning any type of seats across the state of North Carolina. Looking at this map, what you found was that the Republican Party had been solidified in a total number, I believe, of 8 districts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 districts with 2 additional Republican-leaning districts, and then 1 additional district that had a partisan lean of Democrat plus 1, which meant in a year like 2022, the Republicans would win there. So essentially, it would give the GOP back to their 10-3 majority, except this time North Carolina gains a district, and it would be an 11-3 advantage for the Republican Party over the Democrats. And if there was to be a blue wave, the only opportunities for Democrats were in the 4th district here, were in the 14th district, and in the 2nd district, which at most would not even get them to a majority, assuming they were able to win in districts that have a partisan lean of Republican plus 10 and Republican plus 12. So, the state Supreme Court saw this and they shot it down. They said that you cannot move forward with this map. They said that this was completely wrong. You are gerrymandering and you are trying to benefit the Republican Party. Of course, the Republicans pushed back and said, no, this is a fair map. If you're wondering, can Governor Roy Cooper decide to veto it? The answer is no. And it's actually very interesting about, how that actually came to be. If you take a look at who actually put forth the legislation to allow the governor to veto or not veto redistricting maps, you actually have Roy Cooper, who sponsored the bill in the state legislature back in 1995 and 1996, in which he limited the powers of the governor when it came down to the veto, and thus they have no opportunity and no power to veto brand new congressional maps. But with the new maps, the Democrats are a bit more hopeful about their chances at winning in the House of Representatives. The state Senate doesn't look like it's going to go to the Democrats. The new map ends up with the same exact split delegation, 28 to 22, so Democrats aren't super hopeful, but it isn't the end of the world. The House of Representatives could end up more in favor of the Democratic Party. Donald Trump won, I think, maybe 1 or 2 seats more than Joe Biden did when it comes down to the brand new map, whereas Roy Cooper was able to win more districts than Donald Trump in the North Carolina House of Representatives. But on the congressional level, what is the main difference? Well, this is the new map. What this new map does is give the Democratic Party 3 safe seats. Now, that's actually a decrease from the old map. The 3 seats being safe is a decrease, but it does give the Democratic Party, because the vote is now being split in other regions, more opportunities for winning. The Democrats also have the 1st District, which went from, partisan lean in the older gerrymandered map of D+1 to D+5. The 6th District went from being in a position where it ended up being Republican plus 16 and now is Democrat plus 9. The 14th District has been added in, and it is a Democrat plus 11 district, and the North Carolina 12th District is now Democrat plus 25. Taking a look at these two lean Republican seats, you have one that's Republican plus 14. Madison Cawthorn really isn't going to face much opposition. And then in the 9th District, a Republican plus 11 district. But that also isn't completely out of reach for the Democratic Party should they have a blue wave year, which probably isn't likely. And then looking at the 13th District, this only has a partisan lean of Republican plus 3, which means that with this competitive district, it truly could go either way. So in making these maps, what we now find is the GOP has 5 safe districts. They've drawn in together 2 Republicans, and they've kept the rest in their own districts or drawn them into single-member districts. Looking at the Democratic side versus the Republican side, the Republicans do have the upper hand when it comes down to the map, but that makes sense. The court ordered that the map should be proportional to the statewide vote. And the best way to do proportionality is to use a presidential election vote, which is exactly what they referred to. If they were referring to the 2020 House election vote, you would actually find that the Democrats should have the majority in that situation. But again, that's a discussion for another video. North Carolina's map ended up with 6 Democratic seats, 7 Republican seats, and 1 competitive district, meaning that in a year, like a blue wave, the Democrats could technically win that single district. But of course, if this map is to only last through 2022 and there are some major changes in time for the next House elections, it is going to be pretty difficult for Democrats. But just looking at this alone, what we see is a 7-6 map, a 7-6-1 map. That is not bad at all for the Democratic Party. What was a map that was 10-3-1 is now 7-6-1. You are seeing a super significant increase for the Democratic Party relative to the old map. Now, in changing from the 2020 House map, meaning the one that was less gerrymandered but still Republican favored, what you find here is that there is an additional highly competitive seat, there's an additional Democratic leaning seat, and a loss of a Republican leaning seat. North Carolina was one of the very big states that the GOP had complete and total control over, and yet the state Supreme Court just struck it down. The GOP started out, what might I remind you, with a 100-seat advantage over the Democratic Party when it comes down to the new legislative boundaries. When it comes down to the new congressional boundaries, the Republican Party had over 200 districts to allocate. The Democrats had 80, and yet the Democrats are now coming ahead. Looking at the major change from the last old map, the Democratic Party has gained 12 Democratic-leaning seats. Republicans have lost 5, and 7 highly competitive seats have been removed from the map. These 5 and these 7 have been given towards the Democratic Party. Taking a look at this difference between the new maps and the old maps, what you are finding is that the GOP is nowhere near their mark. They are nowhere near where they were just in the past, and they are running out of states. The Democratic Party is merely less than 10 seats away from reaching where they were previously. Less than 10 seats away. And the Republican Party, nearly 30 seats away. I mean, you are talking about one of the biggest turnarounds in congressional redistricting for the Democratic Party in modern history. You are looking at the Democratic Party, which came in with such a disadvantage, with independent commissions that were meant to draw maps in a fair fashion that ended up pushing further for the Democratic Party. With Democrats then gerrymandering the states they did control, New York, Illinois, and a bunch of others, and the Republican Party failing to gerrymander some of the states that they truly could have. And I say failing, not that they didn't try, but that they tried and failed. The only real successes here for the GOP are Utah, Tennessee, and Georgia. Utah, Tennessee, and Georgia. Not Texas, where Republicans had complete control over it. Not, other states where they had complete control, Iowa, right? North Carolina failed, and now the court forced a more fair map. Ohio completely thrown out. Pennsylvania now solidified today, and again, that's a topic for another video. This is also a brand new map that then benefits the Democratic Party in a way that people did not expect. The Republicans control the state legislature in Pennsylvania. The Democratic governor here said that I want a fairer map, and people were saying, it's going to go to the courts, and they're going to draw a fair map, and that's exactly what they did. But that fair map means it's a lost GOP opportunity. I mean, what you are finding here is that across the nation, while the Republicans did gerrymander some states, they failed to do so effectively. They failed to do so in a way that made them have a court intervene in North Carolina, intervene in Ohio, right, now refusing to intervene in the state of Florida, right? What you are finding here is that the GOP is seeing significant drawbacks on some of their brand new maps, whereas Democrats are just chilling, right? Democrats are fine in a bunch of these states. The state of Florida, I wonder, what we are going to see from here. The states left, with North Carolina and Pennsylvania solidifying, again, the Republicans are running out of states to find major amounts of districts. New Hampshire might give them one. Okay, that'll be an increase for the Republican Party. Wisconsin will probably keep the status quo. That means 2 Democrats, 4 Republicans. Ohio is not going to be as gerrymandered as it was in 2020, which means Democrats are going to see an increase in Ohio no matter what. In Missouri, we are going to find that this state is probably going to remain the same. The status quo will be maintained, 6-2 in Missouri, and Louisiana is going to stay the same. The only real opportunity here that is completely in control for the Republican Party is Florida. And the Florida State Senate, controlled by Republicans, doesn't want to gerrymander. The Florida State House wants to gerrymander, but even their gerrymander and the map that they have proposed gives Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump equal districts in the 2016 election, which means that further down the line, if Democrats can reverse the trend of what they're seeing in Miami, what they're seeing in Broward, they can flip the state of Florida at least to a point where there's a tie in the House delegation, as they almost did in 2018. A tie was impossible, but they got very, very close. It was 14-13. So, looking at a bunch of these states, the GOP simply has nowhere left to go. They simply are running out of states to gerrymander. They've already done Louisiana, and Democrats expect that. They've already done Missouri, and Democrats expect that. Ohio is being redrawn by the courts and the special master. Pennsylvania just got solidified. The GOP didn't gain anything. In fact, they lost a district. North Carolina, they lost a district. Democrats gained one, and a highly competitive district was added as well. What we are finding here is that, truly speaking, the GOP could have played their cards smarter. They could have played their cards more correctly, but they didn't. And the Democratic Party absolutely did. The Democratic Party made all the right moves. And I'm not here in a sense to praise gerrymander or praise gerrymandering or trying to say that this is a fair part of the process. It's obviously unfair and it obviously is wrong, but both parties do it. But one party should have been able to do it significantly better than the other, and they simply did not. And I think at the end of the day, when I see maps like North Carolina from the old map versus what is now the new map in North Carolina, I see a major fail for the North Carolina GOP. Because I can guarantee you, looking at who was on that court based off those party line votes and based off the votes in the previous map, they would have approved maintaining the status quo. In fact, they might have approved a map like this, giving Republicans just an additional seat. But they decided to go for the gusto. They decided to go so extreme that the state Supreme Court had to intervene. And the same thing in Ohio. I mean, literally look at this plan that was passed through and the Republicans tried to put forth. What this did was give the Democrats 2 seats. I kid you not, 2 seats. It was crazy. It was insane to see. In fact, that wasn't even their most insane gerrymander. One of their maps was this one, where it would give the Democratic Party 1 safe seat and then a toss-up seat for the 2022 type of environment. And what it would do is it would draw out all of these Republicans and maybe it would put them in a position where, a bunch of these districts are less safe, but they would do it in a point to crack the inner city vote and give the Democratic Party less representation. And it would have been effective. It would have worked if they wanted to put it through, but then the Supreme Court said no. Luckily for Democrats, the Supreme Court was there to say no. If the Republicans truly wanted to and they had control because it was a partisan vote with one Republican overcoming the boundaries, what you found here was that a map where the Democrats in a red wave year would only have 1 district out of the state of Ohio, 1 out of a total number, I think, what is it now, 15? That's insane. It is insane that we even talked about this proposal. It is insane that this was even discussed. And the map that ended up passing through was 13-2. But the Republicans got shot down. This is how they fall. Going too extreme was their downfall. And now, the state that could go too extreme, the state that has the backing of the Supreme Court, well, they refuse to make an advisory position. I'm not so, doubtful that they wouldn't just say, okay, this map is fine. I mean, this is one of the most partisan Republican courts in the country in the state of Florida. And if it was to get there, I truly think they would uphold the map. But the Florida Republicans are holding off. What I see from this is that the GOP in one hand, of course, is gerrymandering the maps. They did it in Texas, they did it in Utah, they did it in Tennessee, they did it in Georgia, they did it in many other states, as Democrats did as well. But the Republicans have nowhere left to turn to. Nowhere. Literally nowhere. I mean, Florida is their last glimmer of hope, and it doesn't look like it's going to be good. It looks like it's going to maintain the status quo. Do I still doubt that, the Democratic Party winning and retaining control of the House? I do. I don't think they'll be able to do it. I mean, if you're looking at a map, sure, more Democratic favored, but I don't think the Democratic Party is going to be doing as well as they did in 2020 on the national level. Numbers don't lie. The polls seem to show a super significant shift and pushback on the Democratic Party, and that's something that simply cannot be ignored. So, with these new maps out of the state of North Carolina, what we are finding is that the Democrats are in a much better position. They have gained 12 seats nationwide when it comes down to Democratic-leaning seats, and I see this now as a victory for the Democratic Party. North Carolina now, and also Pennsylvania, that have just solidified their maps, means very few states are remaining, and we are in a position where nearly all of the competitive and all of the super important large states have finalized their maps, and we are just doing a waiting game for the final few remaining states. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.